All right, on Saturday, we have an SEC showdown game between Auburn and Ole Miss. Ole Miss at home opened 3, quickly down to 2.5. Ole Miss is this will be a home game for them, but boy, they're off their first loss, and you wonder how teams off of their first loss are going to bounce back, and that's the situation here. Teams, you've got a Ole Miss team 7-1 straight up. They've been covering numbers 6-1-1 against the spread. The defensive numbers are sensational, tops in the country. 10.5 points per game, but boy, they're off that tough game against LSU. It was a physical game and their first loss of the year. So, Sean, if you're the Ole Miss coach, what do you do to get the troops up for this week?
Well, first of all, I was surprised that the line came Mississippi 3. It's down at 2.5. I personally think it will close either pick 'em, maybe even Auburn favorite. I just don't see enough support for this team as a road favorite. And boy, did I make a mistake last week, right? Several, as a matter of fact. Both of these teams coming off barn burner, non-covering games last week. Auburn outlasted South Carolina as a 20-point favorite at home, 42-35. An incredible coaching job done by South Carolina, that coach Steve Spurrier. And if you remember right, I was wondering why we even talked about the game. 20-point home favorite in the SEC. South Carolina has no shot really to do much. Maybe they'll get a bowl game if they're lucky. And Auburn, even though they were ranked number 5, I don't see them having a chance to win this division. Interesting scenarios here in this particular SEC West division. And in my opinion, there's at least 4 teams in that division that can take any of the teams that are in the East Division of the SEC. Maybe Georgia would give some of them a problem, but any of these 4 teams would be favored. And the way the situation plays out now, here's Mississippi State. They're 4-0 in the division, but they have to go on the road to play Alabama in a couple of weeks, and then they have to play the Egg Bowl at Mississippi. But they control their destiny. If they win out, then they win it, and they go to Atlanta and play in the title game, and they will win that. Yeah, but the team that has the best shot, believe it or not, is Mississippi, but they're really banged up. If you watch that LSU game, that was a physical beating they took, plus I'm a little sure what Freeze was doing on that last play when he had a chance to maybe tie the game up with a field goal. Ole Miss already has a win over Alabama, so they have the tiebreaker. Then they play Mississippi State at home. The rest of their games are reasonable. The problem is going to be Mississippi State at home, but they are banged up very seriously in the defense. The one guy, and I'm going to have to defer to Jeff to get his name because it's about this long and it starts with a K, he's already had an ankle injury and had surgery on Sunday, and he's done. There's at least 3 other players this morning when head coach Freeze was talking about, at least 3 that he says are day-to-day, and he doesn't know if they're going to play. It's not a secret. I'm not a big Bo Wallace fan. The game is probably going to come pick them eventually. I mean, they're going to take the dog even. Would you think, Jeff? I mean, nobody's going to take Ole Miss -3 at 2.5. I think that game comes down to pick, and like I said, maybe Auburn -1. And let's look at Auburn. Auburn 6-1 straight up, just 3-4 against the number. They haven't covered their last 2, and they are 3-1 straight up against the number versus Mississippi the last 4 years. But like I said, this is their best shot, and not only have to win every game, but they need help. Somebody beating Mississippi State so they could get the tiebreaker. I mean, that's the only way they're going to win this. They don't have control of their destiny. Mississippi's the one that has the best shot, in my opinion. Mississippi State, if they win out, same thing, but they have a tougher road to hoe with that road game to Alabama in 2 weeks, and then they have to play on the 29th of November against Ole Miss, but they play that in Oxford. This is tough for me. It's really not a game to play, in my opinion. Too many question marks for Mississippi on the defense, but you don't know how they're going to respond to that loss. If I had to, believe it or not, I'd probably side with everybody else and take Auburn and hope for the win. But it's really not a game, in my opinion, you have to play.
Yeah, Auburn 6-1 straight up, 2-4 against the spread. They've been running this read option offense now for almost 2 years, and nobody can figure it out. 39.3 points per game, 281 yards rushing. That's 10th in the country. They got a senior quarterback in Nick Marshall who does very well. 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. A lot of talent in the backfield with Corey Grant and Artis Payne, 2 guys who were there a year ago too. So they're cruising along. They do come off that loss to Mississippi State, and it really wasn't close. 38-23 2 weeks ago. They gave up 469 yards. So, I mean, they took it on the chin, Jeff. So you got a pair of SEC teams here who are off their first loss. Somebody's going to be very unhappy Saturday night.
Well, Auburn beat South Carolina, so obviously the bye week was good for them because it's good for their offense. They finished at 395 yards rushing Saturday, 8.9 yards per carry, 551 yards of total offense. So Cameron Carter's-Payne had 167 yards, 25 carries. QB Nick Marshall accounted for 4 touchdowns. By the way, the junior linebacker that's injured from Mississippi, his name starts with an N, not a K. It's Denzel Nkemdiche.
How do you do it? How do you do this? I'm embarrassed.
I know, it took
Well,
him years to
How
get
does
his
he come up
Damakasu
with
right.
this? Yeah.
Well, anyway,
I
that's
knew he was out. But
he's
I
out
couldn't
for the
spell
year.
his name.
That is a big loss. Also, when Bo Wallace threw that last pass,
Oh.
it was his decision. The coach Freeze wanted him to throw a short pass and try a field goal, but Bo Wallace saw something. He thought he could do it, but it didn't work out. Also, last year, Ole Miss was a 2-point favorite at Auburn and lost 30-22, but that was before anyone realized what a great team Auburn had last year. This is what we call a bubble burst game. Ole Miss was sailing along undefeated, and they lose a tough game on the road, and now we have to worry about a letdown. Will they be able to, recover from that? I don't think they will. The defense did a decent job forcing turnovers. LSU had 4 turnovers, but they still racked up 264 rushing yards, so that's always a concern. Bo Wallace was 14 of 33 for 176 yards, 1 TD, and 1 pick. This is Ole Miss's 6th game in a row, 6 games in 6 weeks, while Auburn would be a little more rested. They had a bye week a couple weeks ago. I'm going to take Auburn even more strongly than Sean did. I think Auburn will be my best bet on the show this week.
Okay, yeah, they do come off that game Saturday to South Carolina, and they scored 42 points, but the defense had the second straight tough game, giving up over 550 yards. I'm going to talk about Ole Miss because I was disappointed with the quarterback in Bo Wallace. First, he had a terrible game, 14 of 33 passing. I got the early 7-0 lead last week, and then they couldn't do anything against LSU. And when you got a defense that's giving up just 10 points per game, and you're undefeated, boy, you've got to produce better than that. I was not happy with his decision-making late in the game, and I didn't have a play on the game. And I was also not happy with his comments. They asked him about what happened late, and he said, I'm not going to talk about it. I've worked as a newspaper reporter, and I've had many coaches come up to me and say, hey, my guy just made an error there in the 8th inning that cost us the game. Don't ask him about it. Don't put that in the newspaper. And journalists, when that happens, they almost always say, okay, well, tomorrow night when your guy hits a 2-run homer in the 9th, we're not going to talk about that or write about it. Professional athletes and coaches and even college athletics like this, you got to grow up. If you're going to get the accolades if you win and make a great play, you got to grow up when things don't go your way. You got to say, look, I made a bad play, and I hope to learn from it and so forth. You can't shy away from it. So I was not pleased with that. And one other thing is, in that game, Ole Miss had a 4-1 edge in turnovers. You get that in the SEC, you should be winning the game comfortably. You shouldn't be needing a last-minute drive there to try and force overtime. So last year's game, Auburn won it, and they had 282 yards rushing. This is a better Ole Miss defense, but they are banged up. In that game, Auburn also had 6 sacks of Bo Wallace, so they played pretty good defense against them. I still think it's kind of a cheap number for the home team here. I expect them to bounce back because of this defense. However, also I'm going to lean toward the under. It probably is the better play here. Auburn running the football. This Ole Miss D so good, and they had offensive troubles last week. Ole Miss 7-1 run under the total. All right, guys, let's get to some best bets and tell you what we have going on the weekend. Sean, what do you have for a best bet this week?
Out of these 2 games, like I said, I'm pretty much going to have to pass on both of them. And
okay, and Jeff, you had a blockbuster in the NFL coming up for the weekend. You had a nice 3-pack, and you've had an NBA special on tap as well.
Yeah, you get another 3-pack in college football on Saturday at jimfice.com and a special price on an NFL blockbuster on Sunday. Plus, you're going to get the first 2 weeks of the NBA for just $10. Just call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. My best bet on the show is not Ohio State. It's going to be Auburn. Auburn against Ole Miss. As Sean said, it would probably pick them at game time, but I'll go with Auburn as the best bet there, John. But call LVSS, 1-866-575-8916. 2 weeks NBA, $10, plus college football and NFL and anything else.
Okay, my best bet will be the NC State-Syracuse game. Syracuse is home, playing pretty good defense despite a terrible schedule. They're 40th in the country, giving up 22.9 points per game. And into town comes this NC State team that was supposed to struggle this year. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They have a bad defense. They're 4-9 against the spread. They're even worse on the road, 4-10-1 against the spread. It's a short number here on the home team. Take the Syracuse Orangemen on Saturday. Remember that Jim Feist has his Monday Night Football total of the year. He also has a rare online high roller total in the NFL going for Sunday, and another college game of the month, a nice 4-1, 80% run. You can find those plays and more at jimfeist.com. That'll do it for the college football edition of Proline. We'll see you next week, and good luck with the games, everyone.